All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for real people just like you and just like me. So, Journey's modern lineup imploded this week when guitarist Neil Schon and keyboard player Jonathan Cain fired their rhythm section. The pair alleged that co-founding bassist Ross Valerie and longtime drummer Steve Smith launched a coup to assume control of one of the band's corporate entities, known as Nightmare Productions Incorporated, in an attempt to oust Cain and Schon, the key remaining members of Journey. Now, first of all, if you don't have Neil Schon, you don't have Journey. Neil Schon is above ground. He is healthy. He seems to be loving life, playing guitar, doing what he normally does. And so if you were to oust Neil Schon from Journey, that would be it. You'd be done. All right, it would be a tribute band at that point, and that will lead me, by the way, to other topics, but not in this particular video. So let's continue, because this is just crazy. In fact, this was an attempt to take over. Valerie and Smith didn't act alone. This is where it gets even crazier. The vote to install Smith as president and Valerie as secretary of Nightmare Productions took place during a meeting held on February 13th in San Rafael, California, according to court filings. Steve Perry and the manager who initially assembled Journey were also there, and both sided with Valerie and Smith. Holy crap, Batman. Grudge much? I mean, this is just... And the weird thing is, if you go back in history, Steve Smith was the guy who got rid of all three of these guys. Steve Perry said bye to Smith and Valerie during the 1980s. It was actually Neil Schon that brought Smith and Valerie back for Trial by Fire. And Herbie Herbert, Perry was going to come back to Journey under the condition that Herbie Herbert stands down, which he did. And then I think they got Irving Azoff managing after that. Schon wasn't at the meeting, but Cain was. He abstained from the votes. The two later decided to fire Smith and Valerie and then filed a $10 million lawsuit. The action seeks to overturn the board proceedings and block their former rhythm section from using the Journey name. So then there's that rub that maybe Smith and Valerie are going to go out and actually tour as some kind of part of Journey. Like they'll use the Journey name. They'll say Journey with Valerie and Smith. Our clients have lost all confidence in you, are not willing to perform with you, Attorney Lewis Miller of Miller Bardeness said in a March 3rd letter to Smith and Valerie. You have absolutely no rights to the Journey mark and are not authorized to use it in any way effective immediately. You are no longer members of the band Journey and cannot perform under the name Journey. Nightmare Productions originally had a 3-member board with positions filed by Cain, Schon, and Valerie. Cain was president and Schon was secretary. They contend that Valerie and Smith wanted to expand the board to 6 members, packing it with allies to their cause, while also replacing Cain and Schon. Elsewhere, they say attorney Daniel Schlatt sent out falsified notices announcing the meeting on January 31st at the direction of Smith and Valerie. Valerie, original manager Walter Herbie Herbert, and 3 others, including Schlatt, attended this special meeting at Nightmare Productions. Cain, Smith, Perry, and 3 others, including Sean's lawyer, took part via phone. So Steve Perry wasn't there presently, but he was there by phone. This is crazy. Barondess and Cain attorney Daryl Miller, who also conference called in disputed the validity of the January 31st special meeting notice before votes were even held. The motion to expand the board to 6 members was then passed by Herbert, Perry, Smith, and Valerie. Cain abstained. The same voters affirmed Smith as president and Valerie as secretary of the board, with Cain again abstaining. Attorney John or Tom Jorstad was on hand as an in-person proxy for Smith and also for Perry. Jorstad was later elected chief financial officer for Nightmare Productions, which was founded by Herbert and still owns the Journey mark. Let me read this again. So it was saying that Herbie still owns the Journey mark, according to this. Jorstad was later elected chief financial officer for Nightmare Productions, which was founded by Herbert and still owns the Journey mark. Cain and Schon claim Valerie and Smith wanted to take on these leadership roles so they could rewrite the licensing agreement for the band's name, giving themselves a cut of future proceeds prior to retiring from the road. It apparently wouldn't have worked anyway. Court filings assert that Nightmare Productions doesn't directly control the Journey mark. Instead, Cain and Schon have furnished original documents showing that they do, following an earlier agreement with Perry. That's from 1998, I'm almost positive. Nightmare Productions provides an exclusive, irrevocable license of the Journey name to a corporate entity formed by Cain, Perry, and Schon called Elmo Partners, according to the court filing. Those rights are reserved until the date upon which none of Stephen Perry, Neil Joseph Schon, or Jonathan Cain is actively engaged in a professional career utilizing the name Journey. Perry signed a separate document when he split with Journey in the late 90s, providing Cain and Schon permission to move forward in his absence with certain monetary considerations. Now, we've talked about that. Perry gets touring revenue, and those are the monetary considerations. Valerie had been the longest tenured member of Journey after Schon. He appeared on all of but one of the band's albums dating back to their debut. Smith took over for original Journey drummer Ainsley Dunbar in 1978 and continued until 1985 when he and Valerie were fired by Perry. Both returned in 1995, thanks to Schon, which they don't talk about here, ahead of Journey's Trial by Fire reunion album. Smith left in 1998, then rejoined Journey in 2016 after solo work with Schon. Cain, Dunbar, Perry, Schon, Smith, and Valerie were inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2017, along with fellow co-founder Greg Raleigh. Wow. All right, so what's my take on this? First of all, this is probably why Steve Perry never met Neil for coffee. That's my first takeaway. Secondly, again, it's interesting to see both Cain and Schon pulling together here. Third is, if these guys are just trying to rearrange the deck chairs so they can bring in more money at the end of their career, I can kind of see that, but to say that, again, Cain and Schon aren't really in control of this, and of course, everybody knew that Neil Schon was kind of itching to go public with something, right? He's been that way for quite some time, and this is his thing now. He goes right to the general public. People are going to stop showing up for these shows if it's a circus like this, and getting things under control before the summer tour. I mean, yes, this kind of publicity can certainly work in your favor and generate curiosity, and people show up for these shows. But quite honestly, this isn't good. This just isn't good. And quite honestly, and I don't mean to throw Steve Perry under the bus, but I'm wondering, Steve already has a cut of things, those certain financial considerations, and the fact that these guys did rework the contract, and you can even go back to the VH1 documentary where Steve Perry says, okay, the first thing he did when he hung up, when they told him that they were going to look for another singer, is, I'm going to lawyer up. He didn't use those words, but that's exactly what he did. So I'm not sure why Steve Perry at this stage is interested in this, other than the fact that Steve has always been very frugal, and I think he did very well financially. And I'm not sure if the grudge that he has, and I don't even understand how Herbie is in on this. You got to give Neil Schon and Cain some credit for bringing Arnell into this group, because it revitalized the group. It was a huge story in 2007, 2008, and it propelled this band forward and brought them, new fans, and it brought some of the old fans back. Yes, the music that Perry recorded, of course, is the bread and butter for this operation. But honestly, if you're going to keep this band out there on the road and try to perform these songs and do a credible job, you need Neil Schon. Until Neil Schon decides he doesn't want to play guitar anymore, you need him in the group. And, I've obviously been back and forth on my opinion of Cain, but right now, I'm seeing, a guy who's saying, whoa, wait a minute. Cain is part of the songwriting team. Cain is part of the Don't Stop Believin' team. And, yes, do I think Perry wrote many of the lyrics? Sure. We can go into all kinds of rabbit trails on this one. But quite honestly, I never expected Steve Perry to be here this late in the game, talking through this and basically trying to upend Cain and Schon from leadership positions when it comes to just ownership of the Journey trademark. They brought in the documents from '98. Maybe they thought that those guys had lost them, or just they forgot about this stuff, or this was just a power play to shake everybody up. But now that it's gone public, these guys have been fired. I mean, how do you move forward without Neil Schon and John Cain at this point? I mean, again, you can create a band, and this might be the future, might be 10 years from now, might be sooner, depending on when everybody wants to call it a day. But you create the supergroup Journey with all new personnel, and you get a cut of their revenue when they go out on the road and perform all of these classic songs. That's a possibility. There are plenty of bands that don't have original members in them that go out and make money and entertain audiences. And, the original guy or guys, I'm thinking of Blood, Sweat, and Tears, for instance, the one guy that's left that owns it, he makes a lot of money off of that band when they go out on the road and perform. So, very interesting development here. Just, now you know why Perry and Schon didn't sit down for that cup of coffee. Wow. And it is a little bit of chutzpah, and I know for a fact that Steve Smith doesn't even like playing this music. He doesn't. I know it for a fact on a very, very good source, that he goes out there and he does it because it's rewarding financially. Yes, I'm sure he puts on a good show and a good act. I can't say that much for Ross. I've been told by everybody that Ross Valerie is the nicest guy on earth, but these are the things I know, and on very good authority. So that's it. I mean, the Coup, I don't think the Coup is going anywhere, but the fact that Perry was a part of this is kind of mind-blowing. And wow, I'm waiting for people to start speaking out, but I'm sure their lawyers are telling them not to. So I'm sure people eventually, once the dust clears, their side of the story will go out there. And that's going to be crazy. So, again, Steve Perry sided with ousted rhythm section in Journey dispute. The same rhythm section that Steve Perry fired 35 years ago. You can't make this stuff up. It's crazy. All right, folks, I'm done. More content coming. Please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications, and join me over on Patreon, where it's been very busy the last 24 hours or so. This is a big topic of discussion right now.